Right now, we're going to review how to enter charges in PracticeAdmin's Billing Manager, or also known as how to enter claims into PracticeAdmin's Billing Manager. First, I'm going to show an example of how claims will import into our billing system if you're using an EHR. And then I'll move over into how to create a claim from scratch. Let's say you had a fee ticket or super bill in front of you that you were building a claim from. So first, let me show you an example of how you would do it if you had an EHR that was interfaced with PracticeAdmin, and that EHR had charge capture, and those charges came over to PracticeAdmin via the interface. So what that would look like is they would populate in your EHR import bucket in your PA Today screen, and you just double click on the bucket to open it up. So these are all my claims I have imported over from my EHR, and none of these claims are going to go out and queue to the insurance company until I take a look at them and make sure there's no missing modifier and things like that. So I'll just double click and make my way down the list. So I'm going to double click on this first patient, Lisa Baroni, and what's going to happen is the system's going to reroute me from this Today tab into the Claim General tab, where now I have the claim pulled up in front of me. So the whole purpose of this is that everything's entered for me. I'm just reviewing these fields and making sure everything's accurate and releasing the claim out to go out and queue to the insurance company. So here's my patient name, the account number, the facility that service was rendered out of, and the provider who rendered service. Down here would be who I'm entering the charge to go out to, whether it be the insurance, the patient, and it will default to primary insurance if the patient has insurance. And if the patient doesn't have insurance, it will default to self-pay. So as you can see, I can manipulate these fields by simply clicking in them, and that's the whole point of this. All the work's done for me, but I can still come in here and override it. So I'm just going to make my way down these tabs. So my next tab is my Claim Details tab, and this is where all my coding information is going to be, my ICD-9 or ICD-10 codes and my CPT codes. So here are my claim lines. And if everything looks good, if I'm looking at this and this is a correct diagnosis, this is all correct, I hit a hotkey on my keyboard to submit this claim to go out and queue to the insurance company. And that's all I would need to do. And that hotkey is the Alt key with the S key, so like Alt Save. And that's my way of saving the claim, and it's going to remove the claim from this EHR import bucket and move it over to this awaiting EDI submission bucket, because this is my electronic claims queue bucket. And then every night after midnight, the system will transmit the claims that are sitting in this awaiting EDI submission bucket. So I'm going to come back over to this Claim Details tab. And now let's say I wanted to change some information, because remember, the whole point is I can still go in here and manipulate these fields. So right away, I can see something I want to change. I want to add a diagnosis pointer to claim line 2, and I want to add a charge amount. So to change it, I just highlight that line, and I come up here, and let's say I wanted to add a modifier, I wanted to add my diagnosis pointer, I can even add my charge amount. I'm going to hit my tab key, by the way. I'm going to hit save. And here's an example of a scrubbing edit we have in place. We have many scrubbing edits built in the background. This is just an example of one. It's telling me the date of service I've entered is more than a year ago. So I'm going to say yes, I want to continue. And now there are those changes. So it's that easy to come in here and make a change to a claim. So now I'm going to clear this out. So that's how I would handle the EHR importing of claims. So now I'm going to clear it out by hitting new. And it's asking me what did I want to do. I say no, I don't want to save it. Now I'm going to show you how to enter a claim from scratch. So let's say I have a super bill in front of me and I want to just build this claim. So if I know the patient's account number, and by the way, it's the same process that we just did, but I'm going to populate all these fields instead of them being populated for me. So if I know the account number, I can go ahead and enter it in here, or I can do a name search by clicking on this binocular symbol, and I can even just type in one letter. So I'm going to pull up George Tabor. Now here's a pop-up note on his account. You can create custom pop-up notes on patient accounts where you can do free text, and those pop-up notes will pop up if you're entering a charge, posting a payment, or scheduling an appointment for that patient. So if the front desk wants to communicate with the billing department or the billing department wants to communicate with the front desk, you can create these pop-up notes and they're going to pop up on both sides. Also, the system will create pop-up notes for global periods. So if you bill out a code that has a global period, the system will automatically create this pop-up note to pop up and notify you that you're sitting in a global period. And then once that global period is over with, that pop-up note will stop popping up. However, it'll still remain as a note on the patient's account. So you don't need to track your global periods anymore. The system will track them for you. So now I have George Tabor pulled up. So I'm going to choose the facility that services are rendered out of. And then I'm going to choose the provider who rendered service. And then I can also choose a referring provider. So if I click this drop-down list, I can see all the referring providers that I've ever used for this practice. Now that's pretty standard. What sets us apart from other systems is this little plus sign. I'm going to click this plus sign. If I needed to add a brand new referring provider that I've never used before, I don't have to add them from scratch. I can search for them in the NPI database and add them how they're registered through their NPI. So I find the provider I'm looking for and click Add Provider, and it's that easy. That eliminates time of data entry errors. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Cancel. But that's how we handle our referring providers. And then down here, this is who I'm entering the charge out to. It'll always default to primary insurance if the patient has insurance, and I can change it. Maybe this was a workers' comp charge. So whatever the patient has, I'm going to go ahead and select. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to primary insurance. And if the patient has multiple primary insurances, you'll see them here. Like here's an old insurance and a new insurance. So if you ever need to bill out old claims, you can always select an older insurance. You can have multiple insurances loaded in a patient's account. All right, so I'm done with this tab. I'm going to continue on to my next tab, which is my Claim Details tab. And by the way, I'm using my mouse so you can see what I'm doing with my cursor. But just keep in mind, I can do this whole process on my keyboard with the tab key and some hotkeys, which is a lot faster. All right, so what I'm going to start off doing is entering my diagnosis code. Now, if I know my code, I can start entering it here. Or if I come over here and hit this plus sign, I can view the last 3 dates of service that were billed for this patient. And if I'm using these same diagnosis codes, I just hit this arrow key, and they'll all populate over here on the left. And we are ICD-10 ready. So if I'm billing ICD-10 codes, I select the ICD-10 bubble, and it'll give me my ICD-10 list. We also have a crosswalk tool from ICD-9 to 10. So definitely, if you're looking for a 10 code, but you don't know it, but you know the 9 code, you'll give the system the 9 code, and it'll give you the corresponding 10 codes that you can choose from for that ICD-9 code. All right, so I'm going to enter my data service, and if you notice, it saved that data service that I was just entering for my previous patient. There are a few fields that it will remember from my last patient that I entered, which is provider, facility, and data service. So if I have a stack of super bills, I want to batch them by data service, by provider, by facility, and those are fields that will automatically populate based on the last entry, and that just saves you a step from having to choose that provider, or choose another provider, or choose another facility, or another data service. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a different data service in here. I'm going to enter my CPT code. And by the way, this list of CPT codes that you see, this is your practice list of CPT codes. So these aren't all the CPT codes that exist. You're going to build this list because you can have your own codes that you create. Like right here, I have a no-show charge. I charge patients that don't show up for appointment, so I want to create my own CPT code and fee for that. But just keep in mind, you're not restricted to this list. This list is just to help you. So if I want to build out a code that is not in my CPT list, a little message will pop up and tell me, this code isn't in your list. Do you want to add it, yes or no? And regardless if I decide I do want to add it or for whatever reason I don't want to add it to my list, I can still bill it out. So you're not restricted to that list. That list is just to help you. So I'm going to enter my CPT code. I'm just going to hit my tab key. Here's my place of service code. It automatically populates based on the facility that I chose in the previous tab. Here's my modifier field. I can type in multiple modifiers. It's throwing that comma in there for me. So I'm going to back it up. So definitely you can bill out multiple modifiers on the claim. And here's my diagnosis pointer field. And I'm just going to keep hitting tab. Now you can have multiple fee schedules loaded in here. You can have them by insurance, by provider, by office location. So by the time I get to this field, the system knows which charge to grab from. Now I don't have a charge built in here. No matter, even if you have a charge built in here, no matter what your charge is, you can always override that dollar amount. I'm just going to keep hitting my tab key. There's my units, my remarks. Whatever I type in this remarks box will populate on box 19 on the claim form. Hit my tab key. I'm going to hit save. So now I've saved this first claim line and my cursor's at line 2. It's ready for me to continue billing multiple lines. I'm just going to keep going. And you wouldn't have to enter your charge amount. I just don't have a fee schedule built in my demo account. I'm just going to keep going. So it's that simple to build multiple lines on your claim. And if I want to change a line, you just highlight it and you change that information, and then you click save to override those changes. So right here it's telling me, look, warning, you build a different amount. I'm going to say yes, I want to continue. Now, we do have scrubbing edits in place, so an example would be an admit date. So if this was a place of service code 21 that was inpatient, it knows that it requires an admission date. So if I went to try to continue on to save this claim, a message would pop up and say, hey, you're missing your admission date. So that's another example of a scrubbing edit we have in place. So if I'm finished, I can hit the Alt-S key, that's like Alt-Save, and that's going to submit this claim. It's going to create a claim in the system, and it's going to throw it in this awaiting EDI submission bucket if it's an electronic claims queue, and then tonight after midnight, the system will transmit this claim EDI for me. Now let's say you had a copay that you wanted to post on your claim. There's a couple ways you can handle copays in our system. You can pre-post a copay, like maybe the front desk can post a copay and say, this copay is for this date of service, and as I save this claim, it'll link it. Or if my workflow is to enter copays as I enter charges, I just come over here to this Claim Final tab, and I can enter my copay. Now you do have other save options. Instead of just saving the claim and letting it go out to the insurance company, you can pre-release it and save it as like a hold status for you to come back and finish later. Maybe I had some coding information I want to confirm with my provider, or some insurance information I wanted to confirm with my patient. Whatever the case is, I want to save this claim in the system, but I want it to be on hold. I don't want it to go out and queue the insurance company. That's what these other save options are: pre-released, for review, client review, bill and approval. All these different save options represent different buckets in my Today screen. So if I was to save a claim as pre-release, it would go into this pre-release bucket. If I'd save it as review, it would go into this for review bucket, and the same thing for bill and approval. You'll kind of make up your own workflow on why you would throw claims in those different statuses, and they're just going to sit here until I open up this bucket, open up the claim, and come over to the Claim Final tab and either hit my hotkey or hit release, because that's the only action that will put the claim out in queue to the insurance company. And that's just an overview on how to enter claims or charges into PracticeAdmin's Billing Manager.